Hey, I'm Jennifer Moore of Marcelino Moore, and I just sat down with Kay Bolaños, an associate attorney in my office, and we talked about relocation custody cases. If you are a parent in North Carolina and you're thinking of moving out of the state of North Carolina, this is the podcast for you. I hope you enjoy it. So, Kate, we're going to talk about relocation cases as it relates to custody today. I think you and I both agree that these are issues that come up fairly frequently in our practice, with parents wondering, can I move out of state? Can I move down the street? Can I move to Waxhaw? Can I move to South Carolina?
Right.
And there is case law on point here. And case law is what?
Case law is what guides us.
Yeah.
We look to past cases and past decisions that judges have made, and that guides us in our cases, and we're able to determine, well, to guess, what do we think a judge is going to do based on what judges have done in the past?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. Case law guides us. It is if, mom and dad go to court in Mecklenburg County and get a ruling and one of them doesn't like it and they appeal that to the Court of Appeals or even the Supreme Court sometimes. And then the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court comes back and says, yes, the trial judge in Mecklenburg County did this correctly, or no, they didn't, and here's why. And it tells us how to interpret our laws. And then we're able to use that to determine how, like you said, a case might go in a courtroom, or what our arguments are, and how we're going to frame our strategy at trial, right?
Right. It sets a precedent, so we're not shocked by our rulings.
Right.
Each case is very different. In family law, the cases are fact specific, so we can't guess what's going to happen, but we have a pretty good idea based on what judges have done in the past with similar facts.
Exactly. And we can strategize based on that.
Exactly.
And so for a relocation case, for custody issues, there is a case on point that we always go back to, and it's the Ramirez v. Barker case, Ramirez Barker v. Barker.
Yes.
I have it written here because I think it's important that we get this exactly right for those watching, our viewers watching this. It's important to note that this case, first off, says that a change in a parent's residence is not in and of itself a substantial change in circumstances to modify a custody order. And I think that's really interesting. You would think that if a parent is moving away, that's a substantial change right there that would warrant modifying an original custody order.
Right.
But it's not.
You would think so. But also it's common to move every few years.
Yeah.
And just because you move doesn't mean the parenting schedule should be completely upended just because you've moved.
Exactly. It has to impact the best interest of the child. And that's why it's not automatically a substantial change in circumstances. And I'll back up and say we're coming at this conversation as if there is already a custody order in place, not necessarily as if like mom and dad have just separated and one wants to move and they're trying to establish an initial custody order.
Right.
I think that this conversation could still very much apply to that scenario. But when we're talking about this today, it's as if there's already a custody order in place. One of the parents wants to move, and we're looking to potentially modify that custody order based on that move.
Right. That's right.
So, again, it's not a guarantee of a substantial change in circumstances that you have to get that modification of custody order. But if it's determined that the relocation is potentially detrimental to the child's welfare, then that would be a substantial change in circumstances.
That's correct.
And then what happens after we check that substantial change in circumstances box? What does the judge need to thereafter look at in modifying custody?
So in modifying custody, you're looking at if it affects the child, I guess, what are the pros and cons? Right.
What's the best interest? Yeah.
Yep.
So it's that best interest determination. What is in that child's best interest?
Right. And
there are pros and cons that, of course, one person's going to fight one way and one person's going to argue the other.
Exactly.
So we look at, in a relocation case first, do we have enough to make it past the bars of substantial change in circumstances? And then if we do, what's in the best interest of the child?
Right.
What promotes that child's welfare?
Right.
I'm sure you remember the Ramirez v. Barker case. Man, it's hard to say that. Ramirez, Barker v. Barker. The close relationship between the child and one parent can be the adverse effect, right?
Yes.
Like, if the child is very close and involved with both parents and they're living in the same city and then one parent wants to move away, well, the adverse effect is on that close relationship with the parent that's still going to stay.
Exactly.
Or the parent that's going to move.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, well, what do we do? What if we know it's going to cause an adverse effect on the close relationship with both parents? Then how do we determine where the child should go and what's best for them?
And that's where we kind of dive into the facts of the case and look at other things. Are there other things that are going to negatively impact the child as well? Or are there positive things that will happen because of this relocation that can kind of offset the relationship that's going to be
adversely
affected because of the move?
Exactly.
So we look at this holistically.
Correct. And so the Ramirez v. Barker case has some factors that guide us in determining, looking at the facts of the case and determining, how what the weight is of everything. And so one of those factors, we can go through them.
Okay.
One of those factors is, let me say this: these are not all encompassing. It is factors that can be considered, but are not limited, in considering. And the court has very broad discretion in determining what's in the child's best interest. So that is sometimes hard for people to understand, a litigant, a parent going to court on custody, to understand that this judge can take all that's put in front of him or her and make a decision in his or her discretion, and they have very broad authority to do that.
Right. And I think that makes sense because each family is different. Each child is different. If we didn't give them this broad stroke, we would be trying to fit these unique families into a box that doesn't quite fit for them. So it is hard to explain to clients that it's very gray what a judge can consider, but they should also look at that. That is a good thing.
Yeah.
That means they can look at your specific situation. Versus trying to fit you into a box that you don't fit into.
Exactly. And now we're off on a tangent, but it just makes me, what you just said makes me think about the fact that in every single one of our cases, we do a deep dive into that family, and we're able to really understand what makes that family unique and what's important to our clients as parents and what's important to their children, and utilize that to frame our trials strategy and theme and what we're going to present to the court.
That's right.
Okay. So pulling back from that tangent. So one of the factors in the Ramirez Barker case is the advantage of the relocation in terms of its capacity to improve the life of the child.
Yes.
And what a broad factor that is. So I don't know, fire off some examples of what that could look like.
So the first thing that comes to mind is education for the children. Is there a specialized school that is in this new location that isn't here that would better serve the child? That's a good reason.
Exactly. Like, what if this child is highly, highly gifted and the parents aren't able to get the child into a private school here, or there's not a gifted program and, they're public school. But if, one parent moves, we have a case like this right now. If one parent moves to a place where there is that really specialized school that could support that child's giftedness, yes, that's a perfect example. Or similarly, child is a dance prodigy and is, wants to go to, or how about, let me switch off of dance, a soccer star.
Yeah.
Maybe because Kay has a soccer star in her family.
I do.
And so what about moving to Charlotte to get on the Charlotte FC
Yeah.
all-star team.
Right.
Is that what it's called?
Charlotte FC.
I don't know these things. I
But
don't do
you'd need
soccer.
to live here to have that option available to you. You can't live in Texas and play on the Charlotte FC team.
Correct.
So,
And kids can play on the Charlotte FC team,
right.
not pro.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's something I've learned
Yeah.
being friends and coworkers with you. And yeah, so that assume that situation. Maybe somebody's trying to move somewhere to promote their child's dream in that way.
Yep.
That could be considered.
Right.
Okay. And then one of the other factors is the motives of the custodial parent in seeking the move. And that to me is like, is it selfishly motivated? Is it like, mom, want to move because my boyfriend is there and I want to, maintain or somehow increase that relationship? Or is it, I want to move to get my kid into the, dance academy or the soccer academy or whatever.
Right. Or am I moving because I got this great job opportunity and I don't have that opportunity here, and that great job opportunity would make it easier for me to provide a better life for our child? Or am I moving because I've always wanted to live in California and now that I'm single, I'm going to go do that.
Exactly.
And that's why I want to move, and it has nothing to do with the child.
Yes, exactly. So there are the motivations, good or bad, and maybe not even good or bad, just more parent
not
focused.
centered around the child.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And then the likelihood, one of the other factors is the likelihood that the custodial parent will comply with the visitation orders once he or she no longer lives in the state of North Carolina. And so, a lot of that can come from how the parents have co-parented in the past. Is the one who's moving kind of difficult? Are they, making appointments without discussing with the other parent, or, getting a vaccine without discussing with the other parent, or signing the kid up for an extracurricular, without discussing things of that nature? Or do they co-parent really well? Is the parent that's moving actually the one that's like more of the communicative co-parent?
Right. How flexible are they?
Yeah.
Have they shown a history of, we can reschedule parenting time if it doesn't work?
Yes.
Or how about you call it 6 o'clock instead of 8? Are they flexible with the other parent? That shows a willingness that communication style is going to continue if they're allowed to move.
Yeah. And that flexibility and that willingness to ensure the parenting time occurs will happen.
Right.
Yeah. Good point there. And then the integrity of the non-custodial parent in resisting the relocation. So the parent that's staying here and does not want the relocation to occur, what are their motivations? What are their, what's their involvement? Is it just, I don't want it to happen because I don't want it to happen? Or is it because they have very strong bond and involvement and all of that?
Right. Yep.
And then finally, the likelihood that a realistic visitation schedule can actually be achieved if the other parent moves. And, I think that it really depends a lot on where the move is going to be. We see a lot of summer schedule, with one parent and school schedule with the other. Can you talk more about that?
Right. So it's common in a relocation case where one parent will get a lot less time during the school year, and then in the summer, they'll get more time to kind of make up for all that missed time from the school year. But when we're talking about a realistic schedule, we have to think of, where is this relocation? How far apart are we? Are we in South Carolina just across the border and we're 20 minutes away? Or are we moving to California where now we're looking at flights? Can the parents afford the flights? Is this practical? How many flights a year are we talking? Are we coming back for winter break, spring break? Is it only summer? Is the schedule realistic? It's not just on paper. Does it look good? It's, can this actually happen?
Exactly. Yep, exactly. And I think that's a great segue to the reason we chose this topic today, because Kay and I have had very different cases that we've worked on together that involved relocation. But one was literally an hour away across the border in South Carolina, and one was states away.
Many states away.
Many, yes.
Yeah.
So like many flights.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important for our viewers to hear those cases and the facts of those as much as we're able to share that, so that people can understand really how this comes into play and what the outcomes sometimes are, because it's interesting, even if it's just an hour away.
Yeah.
Okay, so you start with your many states away case.
Okay, so to our viewers, we have to talk about these cases without giving too many details because everything is confidential. So
Attorney-client privilege.
I will do my best.
That's right. Yes.
I represented Dad in this case, and Mom and Dad were from State A originally, born and raised in State A. And then they moved here. And their plan in moving here was to create a better life for each other and for their child. It's actually a big reason why they moved here to North Carolina. They had a daughter here. And when they separated, Mom wanted to move back to State A, where all of their extended family is. Extended family from both sides were in State A. And Mom did move back. And
can I pause you? So
Yeah.
I think that's an important piece. So before the court ruled, Mom chose to leave and go back to State A and establish her life there before ever knowing what would happen in the courtroom.
That's right.
And how, in the interim, did the parents handle custody?
So they did week on, week off schedule, and Mom would fly back here for her week parenting time.
Got it.
And I should also say Mom still held the same job the entire time. She just went remote when she moved back to State A.
Okay.
And so the child remained here in North Carolina the entire time. And so that's what they had been doing until Mom said, I want child to move back with me. And we actually had to bring the case to trial because Dad didn't agree. What was interesting about this case is all family was in State A. And I hadn't tried a case where all family was in the other state that the mother was hoping to move the child to. And so that was something that I was a little bit worried about because I said, shoot, I only have Dad here.
Yeah.
But what I thought was interesting is really that's what the judge cared about at the end of the day. The judge decided that Dad is here. Dad is very involved. He's had week on, week off custody for a few years now at this point. Dad brings his child to school every day, picks her up every day. There's play dates, goes to church here. Her whole life is here. And Dad trumps every extended family member in State A because that's the relationship that's the most important. And what was interesting is, I believe, part of Mom's motivation in that move was she started a new relationship and that partner was in State A.
Yeah.
There was no reason she couldn't remain here in North Carolina. Her job was remote, making the same amount of money, and she had the financial ability to go back and forth week on, week off, which is what she had been doing. And so I think she just wanted to move the child there so that her full life could be back in State A. And so I think the judge saw through that and believed that the motivation was not child focused. And so the judge ultimately ordered the child would stay here in North Carolina with Dad.
And there's that factor of the motive of the parent moving. And you hit on it exactly. And oftentimes that's what we see is a new relationship. Okay, so that is an amazing outcome for your client. So great job. And then a really interesting juxtaposition to the case you and I worked on together, where I also represented Dad, but Mom moved from, they all lived in Charlotte, essentially. And Dad ended up in Belmont, so just, 20 minutes that way. And remarried, and Mom ended up moving just across the state line in South Carolina because we all know it's cheaper over there.
Right. It is.
Yeah. And so there's a reason for it, and a good reason, but she was just far enough away. And this child was young. He hadn't yet started, kindergarten. And they had I was going to say they had an equal custody schedule, but it actually was not equal. Our client dad had less time than mom, but the schedule was such that they had to travel by car sometimes an hour and a half or more each way, depending on traffic, because they were going through parts of our city and the suburbs that are heavily, they're very heavily trafficked, especially during peak hours, which of course is when the drop-offs and pickups were happening. And so this child was in the car lot. The other things that were happening were that they weren't able to figure out where the kid would go to school. Of course, that was a huge one. And neither could afford private school. They weren't able to figure out where the child would do any extracurriculars. Because you think about rec baseball, for example, you do that in your community. Exactly. And whose community do we do that in? Well, then they would do a middle ground community, but that still required the child to travel 45 minutes each way to this middle ground. And it was
where no one had connections.
Exactly. Yes. And so that was difficult. And in addition to that, dad certainly had more of a capacity to promote the child's needs, had a very steady job, had a very steady home life, owned his home. And mom didn't quite have some of those things. And not that, not owning your home or not having, a certain amount of money or anything like that is a factor, but certainly stability, somebody's stability is important. And so that was also went to trial because we couldn't agree. And oftentimes these relocation cases do go to trial.
Because there's no compromise.
There's no compromise. What do you do? It's either here or there. Yeah. And so we went to trial and we're successful, and very grateful that our judge found in our favor and agreed with our promotion of the child's best interest and what we thought was best for him. And now dad has primary physical custody. But in that case, kind of as we see as typical, is dad's primary physical custody is during the school year. And then mom has primary physical right now during the summer. Obviously we're filming this in the summer because I'm in my, I'm in my lace, my white lace. I won't wear this after Labor Day. But yes, so mom was able to enjoy that because there's less need for getting the child to school and extracurriculars. Summer's more loosey-goosey.
It's the flexible time. Right.
So holidays, summers, oftentimes if the child is staying with the parent in town, then the parent who's moved even across the border gets a lot of summertime, gets a lot of holiday time. So two very interesting relocation cases that we both tried in the last calendar year, and it comes up fairly frequently.
I think so.
Yeah.